Okay, hi guys. So this video is going to look into polygon primitives and how we use them, what we can do with them, how we can manipulate them, what they're made up of, things like that. Okay, so we've got our primitives up here. So I've got my cube, so we're going to have a look at one of those. I am going to also go up here. So remember, we can go up to create as well, polygon primitives here, and I can create more things that aren't on my shelf here. So I can click the cube, it's going to generate that cube for me there. Okay, remember I'm in that modeling tab here, so I've got all of these menus up here. My workspace is also set to Maya Classic. So I'm in my channel box over here. So this is what I usually have on this side. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at some of the things that I can add to this polygon primitive here. So if I click on the input here, I can go down and we can see this thing called subdivisions. We've also got width, height, and things like that. So I'm going to click on the word, and then if I drag my middle mouse button, so I'm pressing the middle mouse button in and dragging it, I can actually change the width of this cube here, and you can actually see it's not affecting my scale up there. Okay, I could do the same thing with the scale as well. So clicking on that word, dragging my middle mouse, and I can scale it there. Okay, also I could obviously do it visually and click it on there as well. But what I want to look at here is the subdivisions. So the subdivisions are the number of lines that we have on this mesh here. So I have subdivision width. If I click on this or increase this to, let's say, 4, you can see that it's added 4 more subdivisions down here. Okay, if I do the same on the height, we have 4 more this way, and again, if I do it on the depth, I've got 4 more that way. So now my cube is a little bit more complex, it's got more lines. But what are these lines? What do these lines do? What are they made up of? Okay, so what they're made up of is vertices, edges, and faces. So to select these different parts, let's see where they are. Okay, so what we can do, so I can obviously manipulate my whole cube and move my whole cube around, but that's not really changing anything here. I can hold right click on my model, so this is context sensitive, and I can go to vertex. Okay, so I'm going to select vertex mode. So I release the button there. You can now see I've got all of these points that I can select, and I can move those things around. So I can grab all of these top vertices here, maybe have a look around to make sure that I haven't got any, and I can move them. I can change them. I can start changing the shape of this model, making it more complex. So if I grab those ones down the bottom there, I can move those ones. And if we grab the ones in the middle here, I can move those. So I've created this kind of arrow shape here. I could use my scale tool by clicking over here or pressing the R key. So the R key is going to switch to my scale tool, and I could scale them out. So when I've got multiple things selected, you can see that it actually moves them away from each other. This is a really handy technique that I use all of the time. Okay, so I'm going to go to my move tool now by going over here, or I can press W, and that brings me my move key, and I can select that bit forwards. So I can start to maybe taper these a little bit, press R to go to my scale key, move these out a little bit, press W to go to the move them forwards, go to my rotate key, the hotkey for that is E, so if I hit that E key there, I could rotate these all together and start building some fairly complex shapes there. So those are our vertices. If we do the same thing again, so hold right click, we've got this little wheel here, we used vertices. I'm now going to use edges. So these are the lines, the edges in between. So again, I can move them, I can hold shift and select multiple ones. So I've now got more than one selected. I can move those forwards there. I can scale those ones themselves, squish them, make them bigger, rotate them. Oops, pressed the wrong button there. So I can rotate them, scale them. Okay. And then the last thing we have is faces. So again, hold right click, go to face. I can now select these faces, move the faces around, rotate the faces, everything the same as before. Okay, so we have our at the start of our model here, and these are the components. Okay, so if I make a sphere, Just move this out of the way, we can see that a sphere has a lot of different things going on here. This is a very high poly sphere. We maybe might not want that so high poly, so again we can go to our input over the side here and we can take this down. So it's got 20 subdivisions. I could maybe take that down to 12. So now I've got something that's a little bit, it's a bit more low poly, might be easier to work with when you're starting your base mesh. We could take it down to 4. Okay, so we're getting a really, really low poly kind of sphere here now. If I go down to 2, again, we can change these. Okay, so again, if we go, obviously we can go the other way. So I could take this up to 40. Okay, now I've got a really high poly, a really smooth mesh. Remember, the more high poly your mesh is, the longer it's going to take to render in a game engine, the more stress it's going to put on the system. So when we first start off modeling, we always tend to start off fairly low poly and work that way. Okay, now we're using this channel box on the side here. It's a bit of a weird menu. It is hidden down here. You might maybe want to just use your channel box for the coordinates up here. So again, remember we can set these back to 0. We can delete things just by pressing the backspace key or your delete key on your keyboard. We've also got something called the attribute editor, which is this menu here. So it looks like these little bars here. What this is going to do is there's various different kind of options on here, and there's a lot of tabs, and these tabs are everything that's affecting your cube at the moment. So my lambda over here is my material. If I had a texture for this, I would be plugging it into this color thing here. More on that one later. Okay, but if we go to the polysphere 1, so this is the model data, you can see we've actually got sliders here. So we could use sliders to create the same data. We have a radius, which will increase the size of the radius and therefore the size of the cube, amongst other things. So you'll find a lot of settings in your attributes as well, more so than in your channel box that we had on the side. These are kind of quick sort of stacks we're using to affect sort of like modifiers. This is our more detailed stuff. So again, we have things like render stats on here as well, so I can tell this thing to cast a shadow or not cast a shadow. Okay, so remember, keep your things low poly. You don't need to start with the amount of polys that it gives you. So this may be too many. We may want to think about cutting these down, making them a little bit lower poly. We can always smooth them out and make them more detailed later. Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction to Polygon primitives there. Thank you very much.